Well, South Africa's bid to get more energy to supplement the ailing coal infrastructure of Eskom has run into more trouble. The independent power producer Karpowership has been refused environmental approvals for 3 liquefied natural gas projects that would be anchored off the coast. The Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment has denied permission. Turkey's Karpowership company was awarded a tender worth over 1,000 megawatts, which was designed to help ease the electricity shortages. The Environmental Affairs Department says it blocked the request after all the consideration of relevant information presented as part of the environmental impact assessment process. The decision can be appealed. Susan Comri is a journalist at the Amabhungane Centre for Investigative Journalism. They've been reporting extensively on the Karpowership's contract and the opposition which has been brought against it. Susan, good evening to you. We've seen various obstacles now in the way of this deal. There was an application brought by a person who lost a bid, who wanted part of this and did not get it. We now have this decision by the Environmental Affairs Department. Could this actually be the end of Karpowership's relationship with South Africa?
I mean, I can't see how they would be able to continue as one of the preferred bidders for the RMI 4P. You know, that tender, they were announced as a preferred bidder in March, but they have to reach financial close by the end of July. So they basically have 1 month left in order to wrap up and get all the permits that they need, including, crucially, the environmental permits. Now, they have said that they're going to appeal the decision, but it's very difficult to see how they would be able to get that right in the kind of time frames that would allow them to continue in this process.
You've been reporting extensively on how this deal was put together, and there have been various questions that were raised by it. How did it happen that Karpowership won this contract when there was supposed to be a competitive process? In other words, other people competing against them?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, there was the process itself started quite a while ago. There was a request for information, request for proposals put out. So there was a competitive tender process that was run. What you see happening is as the tender progresses, more and more people start raising an alarm about the way that the rules are being written. There's a feeling kind of growing within the industry that this contract has been or the tender rather, has been written definitely to benefit gas, one of the gas-based projects, but also a suspicion that it has been sort of written in a way to benefit Karpowership. Now, crucially, Karpowership was selected as a preferred bidder when they didn't have a number of their permits in place. And the sort of condition was that as long as they got their permits, by the time they reached financial close at the end of July, that would still be okay. The problem was, though, they needed, crucially, environmental permits to carry out these 3 projects. And what the department has said today, or rather yesterday, to Karpowership, is that there isn't enough information that they've been presented with to convince them that these projects would actually be sustainable and wouldn't be detrimental to the environment.
There's actually a court application by one of the people who lost out in which various claims were made about officials in the Energy Ministry and a suggestion, I mean it's quite an intricate suggestion, that there was a meeting at a restaurant in which someone was told this is how you can get the contract, the person refused, they're the ones who go to court. Because of this environmental impact assessment decision, could that court case now fall away and may we never actually get to the bottom of these claims?
It's a good question. Look, the applicant who's going to court, as you said, it's one of the losing bidders in this contract. They've asked the court to reinstate them, to sort of override the department's decision to eliminate them from the contract. So presumably they would still want to go ahead with that. They have a kind of a gas-to-power project of a comparable size to Karpowership's. So presumably they would want to proceed with that contract. One of the kind of arguments that Karpowership themselves made when they, submitted their own court papers was to say, look, you as the applicant, you can't say that this whole process was tainted by corruption, but then also ask the court to reinstate you as a bidder in this process. So whether that succeeds or not is kind of a question mark.
There's a whole lot that's going on in the Energy Ministry, decisions made about embedded generation, which could change the game as well slightly. I would imagine timing's really important in this. I mean, one of the arguments against the Karpowership that was brought by its critics against the deal was that this was an emergency contract that would last for 20 years. In other words, if all of our problems were solved within 10 years, which is possible, we'd still have another 10 years to go. When we look at how quickly all of this is changing, could Karpowerships now just find that the deal isn't worth it, or government rather find that the deal just isn't worth it?
Well, I don't know that government's really going to have a choice. It's very difficult. These projects can't proceed. If the Department of Environmental Affairs, or DFFE, has said no, then it's very difficult for these projects to go ahead. I mean, on the question of timing, it's such an interesting sort of point that you raised, because, there was an interview that I heard earlier today with the department spokesperson, Albie Modise, and the way he was putting it was to say, look, we as government, we have to be comfortable with living with the consequences of this decision for the next 20 years. We can't turn around in 5 years' time and say, oh, this was a terrible mistake. We're devastating, penguin populations. We're devastating bird numbers. We're devastating the commercial prawn fisheries. We can't do that. Based on the information that was put in front of them after a long process around the EIA, they just simply said, we're not comfortable with it.
Susan Comri, thank you very much indeed, journalist at the Amabhungane Centre for Investigative Journalism. Do appreciate it.